Fun Police Podcast, Episode 5. I'm Josh Grody, joined by my co-host, Devon Payne. And once again, we have a special guest appearance from Nick Stealth Bizarric. And sitting in the background as a captive audience, we have Levi Swan. So today, we are going to be talking about Star Wars once more. Part 2 of our big Star Wars series, so to say. Last time on the Star Wars series, which was episode 3, we talked about the original 6 movies, as in the original 3 and the prequel trilogy.
Before the great Disney buyout that has left so many distraught.
And that's exactly what we will be talking about today. We'll be talking about the Disney films that have come up since the Disney buyout. We will not be talking about The Mandalorian on this episode. Part 3 of the series will be more involved with the TV show side and some of the extended universe stuff. So part 3 of our little Star Wars fest will be Legends and Canon, and in that we'll talk about stuff like Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Mandalorian, in addition to some other little neat stuff that's maybe no longer canon that we wish still was. So, we'll start off today then, just like we started off last time. We're going in chronological order. We're going to start today with the first film that Disney released in their new Star Wars series, Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, as somebody who hasn't seen it, hasn't seen any of these films because I wasn't particularly interested in Star Wars for a while there, a lot of what I heard in reviews of the films was that this was kind of just Disney's own version of A New Hope.
That's actually pretty accurate, I would say. Like, it's essentially a rehash of A New Hope, but it's a well-done rehash, and I didn't realize it until I thought about it like an hour after having actually seen the movie.
A rehash with new characters, obviously.
Yes, obviously. It's not a bad film on its own, but when you know that A New Hope exists, and when you're an avid Star Wars fan, because I don't know why you would see the 7th episode of something just casually, it stands out, I guess.
Well, I mean, I can contest that. Why would you, as not an avid fan, go and see it when it's episode 7? I can contest that. But, Nick, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it truly does mirror A New Hope quite a bit. Again, while watching it, until I thought about it a little while after, I was like, you know what? This is better than I had anticipated. But there are a lot of things in there, mostly revolving Rey as a character, that just kind of took you out of the moment in the universe. Just being able to fly the Millennium Falcon so well after, quote-unquote, like, never flying anything like this before.
Being a scavenger for her entire life.
Yeah, no, she states in the movie, I've never flied this before, and then she's instantly pulling off maneuvers that Han Solo couldn't, and it's just okay. And then the biggest thing for me that actually, like, made me not like the movie was the fact that with no kind of training, she beat the main protagonist of the series.
Antagonist.
And once they win that fight, she would go on later to win the fight against Kylo Ren every single time they fought. But it just, there's no kind of weight when you realize that the protagonist is untouchable and great at everything they do.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things that I noticed as well, was that the Kylo fight scene necessarily, which I thought that had a pretty good build-up, having Finn go first, having who we thought at the time was a non-Force user. Now we kind of know that, but that's spoilers for later. Having him start with that, you know, that's kind of neat, because Finn was one of the big sticking points when it was first revealed. You know, Finn was like the reveal of it, if I'm not mistaken.
He was basically the first character revealed.
Yeah, which
in one of the first trailers
is one of the reasons why I wish that he would have been the main protagonist instead, but I digress. Looking at that fight, there was so much more that could have happened with it, because if you look at the first time that Luke Skywalker fought Darth Vader, Luke didn't win that fight.
No, he didn't.
Luke never technically won a fight against Darth Vader on his own anyways. I mean, it's debatable in episode 6.
I will fight you on episode 6.
Well,
I think Josh's position.
He put Vader in a position to win, and then Palpatine interrupted it and messed things up. But digressing again, having Rey beat Kylo right away, if it was any character other than Kylo Ren and any actor other than Adam Driver, I don't think Kylo would have been able to survive that. It would have been character suicide for them to have done that to Kylo, to any other character, like to any other character or any other actor, because Adam Driver just played that role in such a fantastic way that it made it possible for him to continue to play that role and continue to be Kylo. It just makes no sense to me to have Rey win that fight right away.
Well, and another thing, or another point, is Rey at the time had no formal fight training, and her only real reason to win the fight is that she was very sensitive in the Force, and that's the only standpoint where you're like, oh, this kind of makes sense. And then you realize, you're like, wait, now it's established that Finn actually is Force sensitive, and he had formal training, and he got immediately pooped on by Kylo like you probably should have if you haven't spent your entire childhood being raised in the ways of the Jedi.
To be fair, Finn did put up a fight. He has training against lightsaber users since he was part of the same group of stormtroopers that TR-8R, or Traitor, the stormtrooper that he fought with the riot baton and shield. They were part of the same stormtrooper squad. They had the same training, and in one of the books that led up to Episode 7, Finn was one of the best in his class.
Right, which, then translates to him becoming a Resistance hero. So we'll transition now from Force Awakens if there's nothing else, no other comments on it.
Do we want to talk about Poe Dameron, or is it because he wasn't at all featured in the movie?
Oh, yeah, I think if I remember clearly, I feel like he was supposed to die as a character, after the initial scene when he lands, and then actually the actor was like, I actually really like this character, I'd like him to be included more. And then the writer was like, all right, we can fit you back in. That's why he kind of is supposed to be killed off, and then he just appears, and he's like, oh yeah, I survived, by the way.
Yeah, he's only available for the very beginning and then the latter quarter of the movie. It's odd, but I guess when you put it like that, it makes sense.
Right. When you put it like that, it makes sense. But it's still kind of weird because Poe is a pretty good character, all things considered.
I would say so as well.
The friendship between Poe and Finn as it develops is... yeah.
I'm triggered already.
The friendship between Poe and Finn that develops is definitely one of the high points of the movies. So, if there's nothing else to consider about Force Awakens, we'll move on now to Rogue One, which I would go as far as to say is probably the best film Star Wars related that Disney has made.
I would highly agree with you there.
I would agree as well.
I would say so, since you have a Rogue One poster and 2 Rogue One shirts, Devon.
You can make on it.
I'm just outing you here as a not very closeted Rogue One fan.
It was the merchandise that was available at the time. Leave me alone.
I will say I don't remember too much of the movie except for the ending. And at the time, I wasn't sure where in the series this fitted. I thought it was going to be episode 8. I don't know why. I was so out of it because of Disney, I didn't even look into anything. And then I was like, oh wait, this is a whole story based on 20 seconds of talking in a bar. But it's actually my favorite one of the movies by far. And I remember coming out of the movie being like, you know what? Visuals are great. Story was pretty decent. Characters are pretty good. I liked it.
Rogue One, though, was the one with some bad person CGI, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Grand Moff Tarkin and
Leia and young Princess Leia? This movie was released, I believe, shortly before Carrie Fisher had died.
Which is unfortunate.
And it's funny because when she saw the film and looked at it, and she never realized that, hey, I'd never said any of those lines. She thought that they were recycling some old footage from A New Hope.
And they weren't.
But they weren't. That was completely computer-generated Carrie Fisher. That was completely computer-generated whoever played Grand Moff Tarkin. And when I first saw the movie, I didn't notice. But having rewatched it a couple times, you notice.
Yeah, Carrie Fisher, the first time when in theaters, I was like, is she dead? And I was like, this is so far. Ooh. She hadn't died yet, but I saw that, and I was like, this is some bad CGI on her. I didn't notice it on him.
On Tarkin.
On Tarkin, yes. But I definitely noticed that.
I do remember there being a lot of response on Twitter about how weird Tarkin looked. And that's the biggest thing that I took away from it was, some of the CGI work was bad. But there's so many good things that came out of Rogue One.
Almost everything else about Rogue One was fantastic, I would say.
You had a fantastic main character who, mind you, Jyn Erso, female.
Yeah, you don't hear about that.
Proves that a female lead is perfectly acceptable in Star Wars. It just can't be Rey,
if it's
apparently.
Written well.
If it's written well, anything can work, believe it or not. take notes, Disney. You had a fantastic supporting cast of characters. You had pretty great meme potential because, the Star Wars movies they're a little memey at this point. They're supposed to be a little corny in some of their dialogue, and it makes for great memes. You can look at all the prequel memes. I'm pretty sure there's a subreddit dedicated to prequel memes.
There must be several.
There's probably yeah. It's fantastic, and one of the biggest staying power memes that's come out of Star Wars lately has been, "You are being rescued. Please do not resist."
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
Yeah, and man of your talents.
Farming, really, a man of your talents. It's a peaceful life.
Yeah. So there's a lot of great meme potential that came out of it, but it's still just a really great movie. Introduced a lot of great designs. The droid, I'm blanking on its name.
K2SO.
Yes, K2SO and that droid class in general. It's a fantastically well-designed droid. It shows that the Imperials were working with droids, regardless of the fact that they beat the CIS and, as the Republic. They were still looking into droid technology, which plays a little bit into Legends, but I won't get into that now. And the inclusion, it was just a nice callback to A New Hope with a lot of fleshing out of story elements. Because
definitely.
A New Hope starts off with the Tantive 4 being sieged by the Empire. And you get thrust into this. And this is just, as somebody that liked the idea of the prequels, this was just a fantastic little addition to it. It was a nice callback.
I think that as the first movie, let alone a Disney-produced movie, that wasn't a mainline Star Wars movie. Like, it's not any particular episode. It's just Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I think it fits well because you don't see any real involvement of the Force beside it being mentioned a couple times by Chirrut Imwe. You don't have any lightsabers apart from being used by Darth Vader, but that's Darth Vader.
Right, and Vader's...
And by the way, Vader was in the movie.
Yeah.
He has a limited role, but he definitely has an impact.
But that second, you're like...
Yeah, there's an end scene where... The hallway is dark. There's a bunch of rebel troopers trying to escape the ship and move and carry the Death Star plans into the Tantive 4. The hallway's dark. Then you hear the breathing kick in. He ignites his lightsaber. The whole hallway's cast in red light. And that is peak Darth Vader.
See, one of our favorite Darth Vader traits, Devon, between you and me, is not when Vader is made out to be a more corny villain, but when Vader's made out to be exactly what he is, which is a terrifying Dark Lord of the Sith that was designed to strike fear into its opponents.
Exactly.
The armor was designed for two reasons. To put Anakin Skywalker in as much pain as physically possible and be as cumbersome as physically possible, and to strike fear into his opponents. And when you make Darth Vader out to be just this terrifying guy with scenes like that, it's peak Darth Vader, like you said. There's another, Jedi the Fallen Order recently did that really well. We'll cover that in a later episode. But just fantastic work overall in Rogue One. There was, like I said before, there was so much good that came out of this movie. Death Troopers, one of my favorite things to come out of the movie, and they're not even like a big, are they a big major part in the movie?
They're definitely noticeable, and they play a key role in the major battle on Scarif as one of the last lines of the defense for the Empire. But other than that, they're a notable presence, but they're not a primary focus.
Right.
And they just seamlessly fit in.
And that's a good way to fit in something like this where, you haven't seen it before in the Star Wars universe, but it was definitely there. I like to compare that to Halo, which is one of my favorite sci-fi video games of all time. What Bungie would do is when they would introduce new weapons and new alien species to the Covenant, they would say, oh, well, this has always been around. They've always had this. You just haven't been able to see it. So that was like when they released Halo Reach, which was a prequel to the original games, and they had brutes and spikers and all this stuff that wasn't in future, in the future chronological games, but games they'd already released. That was the main thing they went with was, well, lore-wise, this has always been around. You just haven't seen it. I like applying that to the Death Troopers because meant to be a terrifying force. They're one of my favorite designs to come out of anything Disney related. And, playing as Death Troopers in Star Wars Battlefront 2 is just,
And there it is.
Yeah, it just makes it a lot of fun. So, it's a fantastic design. And the movie was overall well done, well received. And it opened up a new market for Disney. Mm-hmm. You sit here and you're like, well, how many episodes of Star Wars can we really do on this main timeline? Well, you might not be able to do that many.
There are some gaps to fill in.
There's some gaps to fill in. Maybe we could, instead of doing these long overarching trilogies, we could do some little side stories. And I think that's honestly the best thing that Disney could do, is these little side story movies.
Well, I almost wish that Finn's entire, there was, before these trilogies, or even this trilogy, could have just been Finn's story of him being a badass stormtrooper to eventually leaving that life and joining the Resistance. It takes up the first 20 minutes of screen time is his story. Not really, because it cuts away a lot.
Yeah.
And really, from the first scene where his character is going to go. And I think that could have been the best story from the entire Disney trilogy.
Yeah, comparing Finn's story to the rest of the trilogy, and then comparing that to what's in Rogue One, we see something that's more war-focused, something that basically puts the war in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Right, which is a major thing, and I think I kind of agree with, they should have maybe taken a more of a Finn direction with the sequel trilogy, but maybe that's something Disney could actually look into going forward. Like Devon said, there's some holes that have been left in the plot, especially when we talk about The Last Jedi here in a minute.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Gotta love JJ retcons.
Oh, wow.
Gotta love Rian Johnson. But yeah, especially when we talk about TLJ here in a minute, there's a lot of holes that have been left in the story. You could fill those with, branch chain Star Wars story movies.
I will bet $10,000 that little broomstick boy gets his own show and or movie at some point.
Well, there was originally plans for another sequel trilogy, so you might get your wish.
The sequel trilogy 2, Electric Boogaloo. On that note, we'll talk a little bit more about the Star Wars story branch chain idea when we talk about Solo, but now it's time for the part where this is going to get real ugly. The Last Jedi, Episode 8. Nick, you had a comment during our DC podcast. It was just, why? And I think we're going to have that again here.
I already said it.
Yeah, you already said it.
Yeah.
If I could describe The Last Jedi, and by extension, Rise of Skywalker, in one sentence, it would be, Disney had a lot of great ideas, but god damn, they're bad at executing them.
Yeah, in short, wasted potential.
Absolutely.
So much wasted potential. I, as somebody that's firmly held into the prequel trilogy, big fan of the prequel trilogy, and as somebody that was big behind George Lucas, The Last Jedi going as poorly as it did secretly made me happy, because it was
not even secretly, I was just happy.
It internally made me happy that Disney got it wrong.
Oh, it's a little bit out of turn, but a lot of TROS is retconning TLJ, and I was sitting there in the theater loving every second of it. And we go back.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Oh, I was smiling in the theater.
There was so much bad about TLJ. There was so much bad. They just shoehorned so much stuff into it. And one of the biggest shoehorning things that sticks with me is the attempt to make a romance story, a side romance story with Finn and Rose. I hate to bring that back up for you, Nick, because that obviously looks like it pained you a little, but
don't worry, it doesn't come back in episode 9, thank God.
For a minute. No, the biggest thing with me is I liked Finn's story arc. I don't think he got enough attention. But from being a stormtrooper to, if they would have let him sacrifice himself to give time to the Resistance to escape, I thought that was a good fitting story arc, and I liked that end to his character. And then literally shoehorn, she just comes out of nowhere and announces her love for him, and he's like, "Who are you again?" Oh right, we had a couple scenes together. We were in Canto Bight.
For future reference, the whole Canto Bight adventure was supposed to be a much bigger plot element. It was supposed to be something bigger for Rose in general, but unfortunately Rose Tico was kind of a squandered character in The Last Jedi. One of the many squandered things.
Yeah, the whole Rose Tico thing is another example of wasted potential. There's ways to organically build characters, and they just didn't do it. I know Disney's used to having, Disney princesses and just immediately, boom, here's a character. You can't do that with Star Wars.
No, yeah, that
You
works
have
with
to-
Shrek, but
You have to build the freaking character. You can't just randomly put this chick in and say, she loves Finn. Here you go. Resistance hero. She loves him. Of course she does.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
in that, I honestly kind of feel it like not insulted, but it's weird how there always has to be like some romance connection in everything in order for it to work.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
And Disney was like Disney always do this. Like you watch like any of their animated movies ever, parent died, sister, someone close to him is dead,
Something tragic.
So yeah, so there's emotional connection early on, and what they do is they trade on that emotional connection for a lack of character building. She's like, oh no, her sister's dead. And then, like, she's a good character. And it's like, whoa, I know her sister better than her just based off her actions that you've shown. Like,
Oh, that's right. Her sister is in the movie. She's one of the bomber pilots that dies because of bad ideas.
the bombers.
Oh, God.
Awful bomber design, by the
We
way.
Y-Wings.
Yeah.
They exist.
That God.
They're back in the last movie.
You reminded me of that, and it's another microcosm of
Remind me when we get to the last movie.
so much wasted potential, because you had excellent ship designs in the original trilogy. You had excellent ship designs, I would say better ship designs for the most part, in the prequel trilogy. The Venator class Star Destroyer is one of my favorite capital ship designs ever, even if the Venator wasn't an effective ship. There was just so much wasted potential. Y-Wings.
Well, okay, remind me when we get to the next episode, because Y-Wings are particularly powerful in the fact that they can kill entire Death Star cannon Star Destroyers by themselves.
And then you also have the really poorly designed transport ships that are flying bricks.
Well, this is my biggest plot hole point in this thing, is the Millennium Falcon can go to and from this whole ordeal that's happening without being tracked, or with, they don't track him because Rey leaves. Well, there's ferry people off. The Falcon's big. You can fit like a couple hundred people in there at a time. The Resistance is only a couple thousand people. Like, they were just like, no, we're just gonna run out of fuel, and then you're gonna die. Holdo, evidently the Holdo maneuver is literally 1 in a million chances. So she wasn't trying to kill the ships. She was trying to run away. That's what happened. Because you're not thinking, oh, it's 1 in a million. This is gonna work.
Oh boy, Admiral Holdo, don't get me started.
We should bring back Poe Dameron. Like, just tell him the plan, and he will agree.
Exactly. Poe definitely has a leading role in this movie, but unfortunately it's primarily focused against who is supposed to be his ally and superior officer, Admiral Holdo. And while they're fleeing the First Order in their main capital ship, Finn's trying to scramble together some last-ditch effort plan to save the Resistance, and Holdo's just not having any of it for whatever reason.
Is Holdo's the pink hair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The pink
okay.
hair.
I thought that was Hux for some reason.
No, Hux is a ginger.
Okay. All right.
Also
like,
works
wait a
for the
minute.
First Order.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Hux is
And a guy.
Hux is the First Order guy. Okay, yeah. I don't know why I'm getting names confused.
Oh, there's a crap ton of them. It's fine.
Holdo, it's just such a weird situation, and there's so much I just don't understand with TLJ, and you can tell that it's kind of indicative that you look at this trilogy and it wasn't clear that they had a plan from the start, or if they did have a plan from the start, it got tossed out pretty quickly when they made the director change.
Oh no, yeah. Kathleen Kennedy has said on record that they didn't expect Palpatine to be back, and the guy who plays Palpatine said he didn't get a call until like a year ago.
Yeah, that's
Incredible.
that's ROS stuff, but
Well, I mean, there's no direction
it's still relevant.
Well, it's because they didn't have an endpoint in mind. At first, they thought it was going to be Snoke, and then director change was like, oh no, I kind of don't like Snoke because I don't like you as a person for some reason.
This is why we don't let Rian Johnson direct trilogies. Or anything for that matter.
It just doesn't make sense. When I watched the original trilogy, I feel like there was a plan in mind for George Lucas for a prequel trilogy already when he was planning the OT. So not only does he have the whole OT planned out from the start of A New Hope to the end of Episode 6, not only has 4, 5, and 6 planned, ready to go, he has 1, 2, and 3 mostly planned
He was
and ready to
definitely
go.
formulating those during the original trilogy. Like he had, I believe he had called Mark Hamill, the guy who plays Luke Skywalker, shortly after the release of Return of the Jedi. And he's like, I want you to do, like, a sequel trilogy, because we're going to have a prequel trilogy. I want you to do this trilogy, but it won't be until, like, 20 some odd years from now.
Yeah. And it just...
And it shows when you watch the prequels, because except for the midichlorians, which is the biggest thing most people have fault with, even, that's his thing. But everything else, it seems like... I mean, even the midichlorians, it seems like he knew what he wanted to do. It seems like there's an elaborate backstory for everyone. A lot of people didn't like the politics, but that sets a big stage.
So important for the politics are so important for the prequels, and that's where I kind of get mad about people hating on the prequels for the politics. In order to get to the point where you have an empire coming from a republic, in any case, real life or Star Wars, you have to have political discourse coming up. You're dealing with a rebellion. You have to have political discourse in there somewhere. You're dealing with a separatist order in the prequels. You don't really see, much of the politics in the sequels because they learned their lesson from the other one. That and the New Republic kind of gets wasted.
Well, there is no New Republic. The New Republic has less fighting, like a smaller fighting force than the freaking old Resistance. I don't understand what they were doing after they beat the Empire in 6. But evidently, it was
not very much
establishing a first order and calling it a New Republic.
For whatever reason, the New Republic decided to take the model of the Old Republic and just not have a standing military.
Which, okay, from a pacifist perspective, sure, but you just defeated a fascist galactic order that had ruled for 30-some years, if not more. And you just decide, nah, we don't need an army. This isn't going to happen again.
Oh, they just ran off into the unknown regions. We don't need to worry about them.
Oh, yeah,
they'll die out there, and then they did.
They'll die on the Outer Rim and in the mods, fine. And then they came back.
Because it turns out the unknown regions have a lot of planets to colonize.
Yeah, the unknown regions are like the biggest. They're just in the unknown regions. It's fine. We can't find them. It's like it just
an entire third of the galaxy unexplored.
Amazing.
That's
that's not directly related to TLJ, but it is related to just the sequel trilogy as a whole. This would have worked out so much better if they would have honestly let. I don't know how much influence George Lucas had on all of this, but if they would have let him have more influence, I feel like these would have been perfectly fine. They would have been a lot better. I know Disney wants their own movies, and they don't want to have to deal with George Lucas, and they kind of want to clean their hands of him because he can be a controversial guy, but come on. I mean, you need this man.
I think he sends over a script of what he wants, and then they just, they're like, we'll take
it as a recommendation.
Thing. Yeah, we'll talk about this later in TROS. Because, the dagger in TROS was originally George Lucas's idea, and I'm pretty sure it's, the only thing that was his idea that got to the movie, and I'm 100% sure it's not at all the way he wrote it.
Right.
That makes me so sad.
So, any parting comments on TLJ?
If there is one thing I can praise The Last Jedi for, it's in the throne room sequence after Rey and Kylo kill Snoke. The killing of Snoke was absolutely a mistake. But it's 100%. After that, especially during the fight with Snoke's guards, because that entire fight sequence is artistically done. It's fantastic.
But there's a caveat. Once you slow it down, the first time viewing, okay, 99% of people are going to have no problem with it. But if you actually slow it down and look at it, there's 30-something times where people are just waiting for cues or actively going after lightsabers instead of hitting unguarded sections of the body. And it looks really, really good. And again, 99% of people watch the movie. When I first watched it, I was like, well, that was actually, for a fight scene in the Disney trilogy, pretty good. And then you slow it down and you're like, wait, this is just it's not good. And
it's not real.
Weapons.
Thank you for ruining one of the best parts of The Last Jedi.
By the way, Snoke is supposed to be one of the most powerful Force users ever, and he can't sense the fact that Kylo is turning a lightsaber. Just throwing that one out there.
And he gets just destroyed by Rey immediately. It's fine. This is fine. The room's not on fire. This is fine. So, attempting to put out the fire Disney then releases another Star Wars story, one that no one really wanted, which would be Solo. instead of something that people did want, like Kenobi or Boba Fett. So,
Jar Jar?
Solo.
Oh boy,
A
Solo.
prequel that runs through the life of, or the startup life of smuggler and sort of bounty hunter Han Solo.
Yeah, I haven't seen the entire movie, just start to finish, but I have seen like reviews that are like multiple hours long that break down like every scene in the movie. So I have seen it, but not like, you know, the way it's intended to be seen. But I will say I do have a couple grievances with Solo. And
Yeah, just for Nick and I haven't seen it. We had an idea to watch it last night, the night before we recorded this, and it just didn't pan out because Nick needed to sleep, and I don't have Disney Plus, and our buddies that do have Disney Plus had already logged out on my Xbox, which is where I would have consumed Disney Plus through in this instance. So I didn't really have a way to watch it. Nick and I are kind of going in on this a little blind, but like Nick said, he has a lot of experience with reviews of it, so I'd trust his word on it for the most part. And Devin has, of course, seen it.
I saw it in theaters.
And again, I'm not going to say like objectively like how I felt like, watching it, because again, I watched scenes out of context. But the thing, things that happened. Like I can comment on, you know, things that did happen in the movie, not like emotions. But first of all, so the dice, I don't understand the giving of the dice to Leia if that was Han's ex-girlfriend's like symbol. You know what I mean? Because in the yes, Devin's getting it.
I'm starting to remember now.
In The Last Jedi, before God, what is his name? What can I think of? Green lightsaber boy, Luke Skywalker.
Luke?
I couldn't think of it. I was too angry. But yeah, in TLJ, before, it's not even Luke, it's like a Luke force projection.
Yeah, we completely forgot to mention Luke at all going through all
because we didn't
of this.
want to think of it. But so the Luke force projection, Force projects some physical dice that she can hold somehow, and he gives them to Leia because it's supposed to represent Han, because it was hanging in Millennium Falcon, or the pair has been hanging in the Millennium Falcon. But you learn in Solo that the dice are representative of his ex-girlfriend. So it's like, what was that a symbol for? I feel like that entire subplot was just retconned in just so that they were like, see, the dice did have meaning. Like, look
at this.
That's a grievance. Plus, Lando having sex with robots.
Okay, see, I can get over that. I can get over that because it's childish Gambino.
Lando Calrissian. I don't.
To be honest, knowing Lando's character wouldn't put it past him.
I feel
Try
like
anything once, right?
Lando's the kind of guy that'll do anything, and you know,
Literally.
Yeah, he kind of proves
Ooh,
it.
yeah.
And honestly, if I can talk about a casting decision with this, casting childish Gambino in that role,
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the best casting decisions ever, because he looks the part for Lando.
A younger Lando.
Yeah, he looks the part for young Lando. He acts the part for young Lando, and he carries himself with that kind of swagger that Lando needs.
Absolutely.
Excellent casting decision. Just probably the best casting decision that Disney's done so far, other than Adam Driver, for any of their Star Wars movies.
Anyway.
I don't know. Rose Tico's actor's pretty good, too,
Yeah.
but...
That one. Oh, and with that little segue earlier, this podcast now has more background than all of Rose Tico's characters.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Oh, boy. But a lot of what I heard about Solo was, it was kind of like cautionary good. Like, this was pretty good. I didn't...
Visually.
Like, people thought it was good, but they didn't want to like it. That's kind of what it felt like from what I heard. People thought it was good, but they didn't want to like it because it wasn't what they wanted.
Well, Devin, what were your first impressions from the movie after you walked out of the theater?
I started to wonder why this was made. Okay. Objectively, I think it's a good movie, especially on its own.
100%.
But did we need to see the Kessel Run, though?
No.
Did that need to be explained? Did we need that single line referenced in A New Hope to be expanded upon into the main plot? Well, with Rogue One, it made sense because it's the Death Star. The Death Star is the main focus of A New Hope.
The Kessel Run mention is just a passing comment that's you're supposed to derive your own meaning from the whole Kessel Run thing. You know, you don't need a whole movie backing up why the Kessel Run was amazing.
That line is supposed to be a testament to the Millennium Falcon's speed, and yet in Solo, after they do the Kessel Run, the Millennium Falcon is in much, much worse shape.
I mean, and it also, I mean, it's really supposed to give more background to the characters, but I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't, mention how the movie played out, like my own experience. But I feel like the biggest point was just like, hey, we need to give Solo some more background, and they're doing like what they're doing to Black Widow now. And it's like, oh, he's dead. Let's cash in on that. People are going to want to see his life story.
I don't even necessarily think that they needed to life story Han. I think Han
they needed to either.
Han was a perfectly fine character where he was.
Oh yeah.
And if you ask me, there's no way that you can play Han. Han, in my opinion, is a lot like Iron Man. There's a very specific actor that I associate Iron Man with. And that's Robert Downey Jr. I'm not sure anybody other than Robert Downey Jr. could play Iron Man at this point.
Rob, I know him personally. I'm sorry.
And I think the same thing with Han Solo. I don't think there's anybody that can appropriately play Han Solo besides
Harrison
Ford. And, I mean, the actor that played Han in Solo did a pretty good job given the cards that he was given.
He just didn't quite look the part,
but he's not
beyond that.
Right, because you look at Harrison Ford and you look at the actor that played Han in Solo. I don't know the actor's name off the top of my head.
No, neither do I.
Okay, well, this is
unfortunate.
This is a blemish, but you just compare them and they just don't have the same. I don't know. They don't have the same air about them.
It's the nose. It's all on the nose. I swear.
Really? I mean, yeah, you know what? You are kind of right, because the nose adds to like the facial features and just the rough and tumble nature of Han.
Definitely.
And
granted, in Solo, it's a very much younger Han, so I guess it adds to the fact that he's not as rough and tumble, even though the story they pieced together for Han is pretty interesting. He ends up joining with the Empire with aspirations of becoming a pilot, but because, of course, it's the Empire, he ends up getting shoehorned into some grunt work infantry garbage that he ends up leaving in order to pursue his dream of becoming a pilot.
The portrayal in Solo, A Star Wars Story, was Alden Ehrenreich.
Who?
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah, that person I've heard of before. I think the guy, the guy who did Indiana Jones, he might have been good for this too.
Oh, wait. You mean Harrison Ford?
Oh, what? Is that who that is?
Just CGI Harrison Ford to look young and have him completely just go through them.
The biggest issue is that can you imagine the amount of money they'd have to pay Harrison Ford to come back?
Oh, he got bank from just the 5 seconds in TROS. Millions.
Dude.
Oh, man.
Harrison Ford wanted out of Star Wars
30 years ago.
Yeah, he wanted out of Star Wars before Episode 5 even started production. That's why the man was frozen in carbonite. That was supposed to be it. Done. Han's gone. And then he came back.
George Lucas said, "We can't sell dead hand toys."
Yeah, he tried.
He certainly tried. With the carbonite.
As much as I would have loved to have Harrison Ford in Solo, and I understand why they couldn't do it, I completely understand, and it's fine. And Alden Ehrenreich did a good job for what he was given. But the biggest issue is just that it's not Han Solo, because it's not Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford didn't want to play the character anymore, and that's probably why he died in Force Awakens.
That's exactly why he died in the Force Awakens.
He wanted out.
Plus,
by the way, Harrison Ford was in Force Awakens.
Yes.
We've completely skipped over Luke Skywalker and Harrison Ford, and it's fine.
I forget we'd have to go through every single scene to find all the grievances in the trilogy, just because.
And we don't have 3 days.
Exactly. But one thing I will give The Force Awakens credit for is Harrison Ford getting murdered by his own son.
That's a fantastic plot point.
I was like, he's no joke. And then he get beat by someone who's never had any training with a lightsaber 5 seconds later, and I was like, never mind.
Never mind. He's
never gonna win a
just
fight,
a
is he?
bitch. He's never going to win another fight in his entire life.
I don't know.
Oh, God.
But at the time, that was a really good plot point. Good character development for him. Like, Adam Driver did an amazing job during that scene. And I really liked that part. That was the high point of the movie for me.
It's definitely one of the
which makes me sad.
biggest points of Force Awakens.
And
we're going away from Solo.
Yeah, but going back to Solo, I even though I don't think it was entirely necessary, I do like the fleshing out of Han's character in some ways. Having Solo around, but not about what it was about, I think would have been fine. I think you could have probably put like a Han story in between the Kessel Run and A New Hope, and it would have been perfectly acceptable. But I don't know, they went in a direction that I don't think worked as well for it as it ought to have, and I think that there was different things that they could have done to make Solo better. Just maybe the story direction is the big reason there. It was a good movie, but not great. It could have been better. And the story direction is definitely the main part of that.
I think one of the biggest grievances I have with Solo is, ironically enough, one of the very last things you see, and that is Darth Maul, who, for most people, died in Episode 1, so unless you were following some of the expanded universe stuff, you didn't see him.
Or Star Wars The Clone Wars.
That's what I'm referencing. You don't see him come back in the Clone Wars and be a major threat there. You don't see him come back in Star Wars Rebels and meet his eventual end. We'll get to that in
Part 3.
Part 3. But you do see him appear as a hologram projection as the leader of the Crimson Dawn, which is the main criminal gang that served as the antagonist in Solo. You see him reveal himself as the main guy running Crimson Dawn. You see him ignite his lightsaber in the hologram, and you can tell that he means business. He offers an imposing air, and then that's the end of the movie.
Of course, they leave it on a cliffhanger, and for what? It's a Star Wars story. It's not meant to be its own trilogy.
Yeah, you could.
Maybe that's meant to go into like a Kenobi movie, which would be perfect.
It would,
but the issue is they've already covered Darth Maul's death in Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah,
which was a bland series.
I feel like if they wanted to do a Maul movie, they could potentially have it after Solo and build off from the point there.
That's possible.
It's possible, but I don't see it as being.
But they have put the Star Wars story projects on hold.
I'm telling you what Kathleen Kennedy told the director and the writer. Like, Darth Maul is a beloved character, and he sells a fuck ton of toys. So you're gonna put Darth Maul in here. I don't care if it's in here for 2 seconds.
That's true. Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Any other grievances and gripes or praise to keep on Solo here before we move on to our main event? Huh?
Droid sentience.
Okay, well,
we don't need to talk about that.
That's a can of worms we don't need to open right now. Let's move on to
No Living Being.
Rise of Skywalker.
Oh boy.
Oh, so what could have been. So, as Devon has so graciously liked to remind me of, the movie was changed drastically from its original script. Mm-hmm. So we're going to lead off with this because this is probably the most controversial part of the entire movie at this point. It's the most recent stuff that's come out. Supposedly, there's been a leaked version of the original script that has come out, and I believe some people have corroborated that this was the original version of the script. I'm not sure. Take that with a pinch of salt. But as Devon has so liked to tell me, it was originally supposed to be Star Wars, A Duel of Fates.
Something like
that. And I think that would have been a much better title than Rise of Skywalker. I think that would have been a much better premise. You're drawing upon nostalgia for some people because A Duel of Fates is a bit of a meme song as far as Star Wars goes. The main theme that plays when Obi-Wan is fighting Darth Maul in Episode 1. So it harkens back to that.
Scene.
Huh?
I said my favorite fight scene.
Yeah, 100% one of the best fight scenes ever choreographed in Star Wars history, which is something the prequels did really well in comparison to the sequels.
But some people don't like the prequel fight scenes because they're good.
Yeah. Well,
Well, there's some critique that can be done with the final fight in Episode 3, but that's
neither here nor there. That's for our big roundup Part 4, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Looking at Rise of Skywalker from the outside, looking in, this wasn't
good.
There wasn't a lot of people that were excited for Rise of Skywalker, I think. I think a lot of people originally, just coming off of The Last Jedi and Solo, were kind of like, enough's enough. stop it, it's already dead, please. Do we really need this? If this is happening, it needs to be good.
I knew ahead of time that I was going to go pay money and see the movie in theaters because that's what I do for Star Wars
You're
movies.
a big Star Wars fan. It makes sense.
I was in it to finish the ride, and I didn't have my expectations that high.
You were at the point where you had accepted that you weren't going to be able to get off Mr. Bones' wild ride without seeing Rise of Skywalker.
This is correct.
Okay. There's so many directions that this could have went in. And bringing back J.J. Abrams for Rise of Skywalker threw a big can of worms into the entire thing, but I think was probably the best decision that they could have made regarding directorship for the movie.
I think so as well.
Absolutely.
After the Rian Johnson fiasco in TLJ, I don't think it would have been appropriate to keep him around, even for continuity's sake.
No. Can we even tally up the amount of things that he just brought up that were never explored? Like he managed in one movie to open 11 can of worms and just never flesh out any of them.
Right,
and he thought he was gonna have the third, I think.
Granted, yeah, he thought he was gonna have another episode to do it,
but it's the final episode. You're not supposed to be learning things.
I don't know why they let the directors take the lead on the plot of the movies, but
I had no direction. Kathleen Kennedy was like, "Hey, make us money."
Who is Kathleen Kennedy, by the way?
She is
Is she the Star Wars director for Disney?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, that makes sense.
The source of all of our ills.
Yeah, we can get on George Lucas for leading with the marketing in mind for his Star Wars movies. We can get into that for the prequels with episode 2 to episode 3, the change of the clone helmets.
Yeah.
That a lot of people there's a lore reason for it, but there's a lot of people that look at that as a pure marketing reason, and we can get into that with all of the Star Wars movies. But I feel like with the sequel trilogy, it's even more apparent. And it's partly because of the directorship change, the shift to Disney, and just the incontinuity of everything.
I think one of the better examples of leading with marketing in mind for Rise of Skywalker is the introduction of yet another droid for the sequel trilogy. The main new droid we got was BB-8, and then in Last Jedi, his evil clone BB-9E. Not an evil clone, but same model.
Right, but they're both BB unit astromech droids.
Yeah, they're new series astromech droids, and they do their job well.
Yeah,
and they're interesting.
There's a place for them. It's just like there was a place for R2 and for C-3PO in the older movies. There's a place for BB-8. Everybody loves the cute little droid.
And then they decide to add another one in Rise of Skywalker that Nick has affectionately called Conehead, because I don't think any of us knows what its actual name is.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It holds no actual substance in the plot. And it's there to make money.
How is it in that ship, and how has that ship not been stripped of parts? It's been sitting dormant for 20 years on that frickin' planet.
Yeah, so this Conehead is D0. That is Conehead's entire name. Is D0, a new droid made for Episode 9. It looks like it's just a mess.
It's basically just a cone on a wheel.
Yeah, it's a cone on a wheel. And I see what I think is some concept art for it, and some of the concept art looks like a mouse droid with the cone head attached to it. And I think that would have been a substantially better design. It looks like it takes some design premises from ducks, which is fine because ducks are great. But ducks are great.
Ducks are great.
If you're going to take one thing away from this, take away that ducks are great. But they introduced D0 for the point basically entirely of marketing, because it's basically unsubstantial.
Fun fact about D0, the few voice lines he has are done by J.J. Abrams.
Good job, J.J.
I honestly don't mind the marketing from if they slipped the stuff in. And
they made it work.
You see it and you're like, okay, that's because they want to sell that. But I honestly don't mind that as long as the movie isn't the worst Star Wars movie ever made.
Well, it's not TLJ, so. Yeah,
okay.
There are some people that will contend that Rise of Skywalker is the absolute worst Star Wars movie ever made.
Well, and there's a lot of these marketing decisions just throughout all of the sequels, and with killing characters off. And even the OT, of course, but...
Or the prequels, I guess.
And the prequels, right. But with the prequels, a lot of it, there's a lot of sense to be made out of some of it. Mm-hmm. Like the Phase 1 to Phase 2 clone helmet shift. There's a reason behind that gets explained. There's not really a reason for the sequel trilogy to introduce Captain Phasma and then immediately kill Phasma off.
And then bring Phasma back, and then kill Phasma off again.
Other than just to market Chrome Dome Stormtrooper.
Well, and I think that's honestly what gets me annoyed in marketing is they brought in a strong, powerful woman that was in Game of Thrones. That was a character I think we all liked in Game of Thrones if you watched it. And she came in and she was doing interviews and she was like, I think it's great that they could show that a woman can be in a position of power and be a badass in the Star Wars universe. By the way, I only have 2 minutes of screen time in both movies I'm in. Bye.
And I get killed immediately.
I'm honestly surprised that Phasma didn't somehow make a return in Rise of Skywalker.
That would have been worse than Palpatine if she came back 3 times.
I did notice a lot more female stormtroopers in Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fine. You know, that's perfectly fine.
No, we don't care.
It's nice.
You do it well, and it's fine. You do anything well, and 99% of the time, it's going to be fine. The biggest issue with Phasma that I have is that Phasma is more well fleshed out in a Star Wars tie-in video game, Battlefront 2, than she is in the movies. She's a more well fleshed out character in there. I was looking through the star cards in Battlefront 2, which is like your perks in Battlefront 2, and the star cards almost have as much lore in them as the actual movies have for Phasma. Her abilities have as much lore in them as the movies. True Survivor. Oh, is this because Phasma's really hard to kill? Well, apparently, but I wouldn't have known from watching the movies that Phasma's really hard to kill because she died.
Twice.
Right
I'm
away.
telling you, she shouldn't have survived The Force Awakens. And that is a hill I will die. How did she survive? How did she get off of that planet?
There's an entire comic about that, by the way.
It's fine. There's so much more they should have done with Phasma. And that's the main point that we ought to take away from that. There's so much more they should have done with Phasma. And then they replace Phasma in Force Awakens with Sith Troopers.
Ah, yes. Big old red tomato. Well, they're not even big. They're just
stormtroopers in red armor.
But red and with a slightly different helmet design. And from a design aspect, besides the glaring red, they're look fantastic. Fine. But they get maybe 5 seconds of screen time and decent lighting.
Yeah, no, the Sith Troopers are a great idea.
There is no good lighting.
Yeah, the Sith Troopers they're a fantastic idea, not executed well upon.
I think that was another case of marketing in mind.
Yes, it absolutely was. I love the Sith Trooper design, even with the glaring red. I think the Sith Trooper design is one of the best Stormtrooper designs of all time. It's right up there with the Phase Zero Dark Troopers, in my opinion, and with the Death Troopers. They're up there in that design department. They just look bad ass. But they don't get screen time. They don't get to show what they're supposed to be, which is supposed to be a terrifying special forces operation of the First Order meant to fuck shit up.
Knights of Ren.
That's another part
we
of this.
finally get the Knights of Ren in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, Kylo Ren. Well, where does the Ren come from? Well, he's a Knight of Ren. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means
we
that
still don't know.
He kind of leads the Knights of Ren, except for they've been working for Palpatine the whole time, even though no one knew Palpatine was alive. And when Kylo goes to confront them in the end of the movie, he had a fucking pistol, and then it disapparates like he's in the Harry Potter universe, and it's just gone when he turns the corner, and there's 5 people there waiting to kill him, and he just doesn't have a weapon.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm mind blown. Oh, and by the way,
it's a big part of his character that he's supposed to be the leader of the Knights of Ren, but you don't explain what that is until the very end of the.
We're still not sure what the Knights of Ren
We still aren't sure what they even are.
And my favorite part is the dialogue when they introduce them. It like they're 2 stormtroopers are just walking in the hall, and then they see 5 people in fucking cloaks walking in the hall, looking like they're gonna beat some shit up. They're like, "Oh God, it's the Knights of Ren. We should walk the other way." What? What?
Stormtroopers are some of the best content in the sequel trilogy.
They're introduced.
Whether they intend to be comical or not. You know, that's almost a problem. Making the Stormtroopers comical, okay?
It's always been a problem.
We want to, okay, see, here's the thing. The OT with the Stormtroopers, the original trilogy, made them out to be, they're Stormtroopers, they're meant to be deadly. Mm-hmm. That gets shown right away with A New Hope. But then they end up becoming way too comedic as the movies go on. And we end up with the myth of Stormtrooper aim, and that's perpetuated and still poked fun at by Star Wars is Stormtrooper.
To be fair, that was in the OT.
That it was in the OT.
Like they're just running through destroyers, killing everyone, not ever suffering consequences, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and
it's one of my few grievances with the OT.
They, you know, in the OT though, with making Stormtroopers comical when they weren't missing every single shot, when they had dialogue and they were being comical, it was well timed. They had comedic timing behind it.
LT did that great.
These are not the droids these aren't the droids we're looking for. They did the comical bits great. Rise of Skywalker didn't really, because it made them out to be entirely comical. Oh, well, those are the Knights of Ren. We should turn around and walk the other way.
This is my problem.
Yeah, unintentionally comical.
This is my problem with everything. Like Hux. Hux in Force Awakens was kind of a badass character, and then he kind of just gets stripped, and he's like he's a punching bag for the rest of the series.
Kind of gets kicked aside
and literally just shot. But he's like,
unceremoniously shot by this one officer that.
No.
Who is this again?
I don't know, but he's more
important
fragged than the guy who built the Death Star the size of a freaking planet, evidently. I don't know.
Star Killer base. Wasted potential. If we're going to summarize the sequel trilogy in one word, or in like one phrase, in one word it would be garbage. In one phrase it would be wasted potential. Because there was...
No, wait. Mary Sue.
Well, we'll cover that in a second, but that factors into the wasted potential. And then once again, we have the further expansion in Rise of Skywalker of Rey's character. Rey's the Daisy Ridley and Rey, main character of the movies. It makes sense to continue to expand the character. But there's...
Do they really, though?
One big issue. You're continuing to expand upon a character that's already been expanded upon a lot. You're making a character that's already really powerful even more powerful, and you're developing this little thing that literary critics like to call a Mary Sue.
Developing? Oh boy,
it's already been around.
You're nurturing it like a freaking bonsai.
Exactly, but Rise of Skywalker fully pushes it into the limelight. This is something that's been developed and has been around for a while, but this is something that Rise of Skywalker turns up to 11. Devin, do you know what the definition of a Mary Sue is?
Character that is great as everything they do because the plot demands it. I don't know.
Yeah, so
and people tend to like.
So a Mary Sue, for those that are unaware, is a literary character device where the character is an image. Sometimes the character is an image of the writer, so it's like a self-insert sort of, where the character is an image of the writer, where they are essentially untouchable and they can do everything flawlessly. So Rey is a perfect example of a Mary Sue in the sense that, going back to episode 7, first time she's ever wielded a lightsaber, she immediately beats Kylo Ren, who is a Dark Lord of the Sith and is supposed to be one of the most well-trained lightsaber users and force wielders of the time. She beats him with minor effort on a planet that's falling apart in her first ever time holding a lightsaber that she rejected accepting originally. So we have that. She flies the Millennium Falcon perfectly. First time she's ever flown a ship in her entire life because she's been a scavenger.
Not expertly, not perfectly, and not like she's good at driving. She drives it through the decaying corpse of a freaking destroyer, and then does like weird coordination moves with Chewie, cutting off the engine, doing flips, shooting people out of the sky. She's the best pilot on this freaking planet at the moment.
Any examples from TLJ that you can call upon?
First time ever shooting a gun gets a triple kill on the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, that's what I was going to bring up.
Lifting more boulders than Yoda could have ever dreamed of.
Yeah, that's the most egregious example from The Last Jedi after receiving no notable training from Luke.
She's just tossing boulders.
She lifts like over a dozen boulders without hardly any effort.
The side of a cliff.
Yeah.
It's kind of absurd.
That
There's one beat of sweat.
See, it's really funny because in Battlefront 2, in Heroes vs. Villains, there's a really annoying announcer. And when you go on a kill streak with any of the heroes, there's like a specific voice line for that hero. And the one for Rey is she's tossing bodies like boulders. Which
no one messes with the boulder.
Yeah.
You get that reference.
Oh my god.
Oh god, we've drifted to Avatar. Oh no, it always happens.
Yeah, so it's another example of just how Rey is, and then going, killing Snoke right away as well in TLJ.
Well, technically that wasn't Rey, that was Kylo.
Oh, yes, it was her lightsaber.
Either way, he's died way too early, and
was
now
never an actual threat.
Now we have to somehow salvage the plot by bringing back Palpatine from the dead.
Which
Skywalker? Because evidently that's what Palpatine means nowadays.
Yeah, apparently.
By the way, Palpatine is also Rey's grandfather.
Right.
This plot was horribly cobbled together, can you tell?
Right, which is interesting because I believe the original leaks before The Force Awakens, Daisy Ridley had, like, they were going on a talk show. It was Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver going on a talk show to talk about it. And, like, the title cards that they had for them, put their names of the characters in there. So it was like Daisy Ridley, and then this is the character. The names that they put on the board for the characters it was Rey Kenobi and Ben Solo. So Ben Solo came true because that was, a big plot point. But Rey Kenobi did not, because it ended up being Rey Skywalker.
Well, and
when it should have been Rey Palpatine.
Well, and then the second movie, TLJ, it was noted that you're nobody. Like, it's supposed to be like they flopped from that to anyone can become a Jedi, or anyone can be a powerful Force user. You don't have to come from a specific family. And like, oh shit, we're losing viewers. Go back to nostalgia. And before we get too far away, though, I will say I did appreciate in TROS how she actually almost lost a fight. She didn't end up losing a fight, and then she somehow gained beautiful Force healing abilities. Actually, she learned it from Leia. That's whether or not you like Force healing, I'll accept she actually trained for something for once.
And Force healing is something that has been in the lore previously. It's not something that came up entirely from Rey.
Yeah, it even comes up in The Mandalorian, but we'll get to that.
Well, that was specifically for this, I would argue. So
yeah,
people
probably.
are aware of it. But, she received training for it, so I'm not mad about that. But she actually almost lost a fight. The only reason she didn't lose a fight is because Leia, helped kill her own son. But, what are you going to do? I appreciated that. I was like, oh, she's not a god. She is almost human.
She's starting to show weakness, which is something that should have been shown from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Luke was shown to have a lot of weakness right away in the OT.
And that was some of the main plot points.
Yeah, was Luke's own weaknesses. In the prequels, Anakin's own vices was a big part of the movie.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason why he falls to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader.
Almost the entire... Well, that's not true.
A lot of it is Anakin's own vices and Anakin's own struggles. With this, it's just Rey and overcoming everything. And I feel like a lot of this had to be shoehorned in because they felt like for political reasons they couldn't show a main lead character woman losing on screen. I don't know. I think that they could have done it and they could have done it well, but I would almost wonder if this was supposed to be a political message in some way. I'm not sure. I'm just spitballing with it, but it's possible that somewhere in the convoluted mind of Disney, they thought that, well, we can't show a woman protagonist losing on the big screen. This is one of the first big woman protagonists in a movie.
Yeah, I don't think it's for, to voice a political discussion. I think, though, there is some of that, where it is, if she is bested by a man, then that's... what does that say about a woman? What is that? In the modern day and age, you're going to get roasted if you do that in Hollywood. But I think that you have to have depth to a character. And if a character can never lose, then it's not interesting. Or if you never see the low points, you're not super invested in a character. Some of the best movies in the world are investing in a character when they're at their lowest points and seeing how they build themselves up, seeing how they overcome them.
That's one of the big things about Joker is coming from the bottom.
Episode 4. Now we're here.
Yeah.
Well, even in the OT, episode 4, his entire family dies. It's a very big low point for him. And then you kind of see how he gathered himself as a person throughout the next 2 movies and becomes someone who wants to sit in the island and cry all day.
And then he goes and hits rock bottom after.
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Reasons that we don't see on screen except, apparently... Kylo Ren just goes nuts and kills everyone, except it's needlessly convoluted.
Yeah, and it's funny because it wasn't really explained well, and this is one of the few times where the Legends expanded universe actually probably wrote the story better, because Luke's story after the OT in Legends was a lot more cohesive and a lot more well understood.
Oh, definitely. If you
sequels.
If you forget the Dark Empire existed, we can touch on that next.
Yeah, we can touch on that. We can touch on that later in the next episode. But it's interesting just in the way that all worked out, and it's really funny that Disney couldn't put together a better thing than that.
How do we feel about Force Skyping? Like, I don't mind it, but passing objects through infinite distances seems like that'd be a little strenuous.
They had an entire fight through that, and I don't like it.
Okay, force telekinesis, in my opinion, is perfectly fine.
Skyping.
But force Skyping, okay, force communication through the force, it's already been established, already been done. It was already a well-documented thing. Use the force, Luke. It was well-documented in the OT.
Well, wasn't he dead at that point when Kenobi said that?
Yes,
Ben Kenobi. Ghost.
Ben Kenobi was dead at that point.
So it's not the same thing as if two people that are living if one person's dead and they're forced.
Right.
It's not,
And
over
I think it's just an expansion upon that, though. I don't think that the whole force communication thing is that big of a deal. It's just the way that they use it to, I don't know, moving things through the universe through the force.
That should take so much energy.
Drain you.
I mean, Luke basically died by astral projecting himself.
That's what I'm saying.
He did the same thing, and then he died because of it.
Why not just go there if you're going to die anyway?
Yeah, right. And
we know his plane works. It's established that the plane just... Okay.
What am I going to do? Face down the entire First Order with a laser sword? He does that, but not really.
Kind of.
Well,
by the way, the laser sword is canon now. And the angels wept. I mean, what's the point of being alive if Force Ghosts can summon lightning? They can be anywhere they want. They can actually interact with objects and use the Force. He grabbed the lightsaber. He lifted up the frickin' X-wing. It's a problem. I liked the limits in the OT.
This is a movie.
There were clear defined limits.
This is a movie example of power creep. And this is something that's really hard to get a movie example of power creep. You know what power creep is, right?
I think I can surmise, but you go in.
I'll explain it quick then. Basically, think of Rainbow Six. Actually, I'll use Rainbow Six as an example here. You start with your base operators, and the base operators have some pretty tame abilities. But then as time goes on, you lose.
Yeah, things get bigger and bigger.
Things get bigger and bigger and bigger and better.
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man going to fighting Thanos.
Yes, stuff just it gets exponentially bigger, and suddenly the original stuff gets harder and harder to use. It gets worse, not because they're making it worse, but because they're making things better. Yeah. So this is just it's a big example of power creep. The idea of Force Ghosts was a big deal. That's a big deal in the lore. That was something that wasn't around previous to the OT.
Yeah,
it was barely around previous to the OT.
Episode 3 was the first time.
I think the first time we see an actual Force Ghost
is the Clone Wars.
It's in the Clone Wars when Qui-Gon Jinn appears on Mortis to Obi-Wan, and then we don't see that. You have Qui-Gon in the Extended Universe teaching that skill to Yoda and to Qui-Gon after Episode 3.
Yeah, he teaches it to Obi-Wan and then to Yoda when Yoda dies.
Yeah,
which. That's how the whole Force Ghost thing exists to begin with, is because of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Mm-hmm.
No one previous to that.
In the prequels, though.
Yeah, that's established in the prequels, and then the Force Ghosts show up in the sequels because not the sequels, but in the OT and then in the sequels. But in the sequels, it's like they're Force deities now. Instead of being Force ghosts, they're Force gods.
We understand that they're one with the Force, but
they're literally one with the universe.
it's too much.
Honestly,
I know the Force is the interconnecting thing that
really,
runs
it just
the whole
cells in your body.
universe.
Actually,
yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, apparently.
It's funny because they didn't expand upon that at all after Episode 1.
Because I knew. Well, I would accept it if it was like this island. It was the original Jedi temples around this island because it was just the most Force. It was the forciest place in the world. We got a creepy hole in the ground. It goes to a Force place, some mirrors, and Rey's big hand. But I can't. But it just happens anywhere. And I was like, okay. I could almost accept it if it was that, but no.
Well, and then even adding on to that, even with Luke being there and doing that, okay, sure, because it's one of the most powerful Force places in existence. Doesn't Leia do the same Force astral projection bullshit when she's in the middle of space?
No, she literally just pulls herself back.
Don't get me talking about Mary Poppins'
die somehow, but that's...
Yeah. Well, evidently she Force created a invisible thing around her.
An air ball, great.
But she would have done that after she got sucked out into the vacuum of space, and once you do that, you immediately pass out because of the way the physiology works of it. Where you can technically actually still survive, I think. I read a paper on it for another couple minutes, but you're out. People have to save you. You're just gone.
Well, see, yeah, because the thing with going out into space, believe it or not, space is not cold. Space is it's a vacuum. It is the absence of temperature.
It's the absence of basically everything.
It's the absence of basically everything. It's especially the absence of temperature, though. So space is not making you cold, it's wicking away your heat.
Yeah.
And because there's no resistance with the way that your heat exits your body in the vacuum of space, your heat leaves exponentially, which is why perceive space as cold is because it's not cold, it's the absence of temperature. And your heat just evaporates.
Yeah, but no, she flies in like Mary Poppins, just without the umbrella. And that is the worst part of the entire sequel trilogy for me. It's like, you should be dead. Oh, and then the frickin' I don't understand this. Okay, so Kylo is out there, he blows up his mom, woo! And then they're on the, what is the lead destroyer called in that fleet?
That's a great question.
The one that gets cut in half.
I don't know.
Okay, the one Snoke's on, whatever. And then Hux is like, "Oh, get back the God, what are the little fighters? The TIE fighters." He's like, "Get back the TIE fighters. We can't cover you from all the way back here. A, they're like 2 football fields away. B, they've never cared before. They're the Empire. They've got millions of TIE fighters. And they were destroying the Resistance ship. They would have been dead.
Yeah, the First Order technologically and supply wise exponentially outnumbered the Resistance and everything.
And they've never worried about their people. It's like Russia during any world war ever. It's like, you take a gun, you take some bullets, you pray that someone dies in front of you. And it's like,
and you may not even get the gun.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. There's 3 people.
Yeah, the First Order, prior to their showcase in The Force Awakens, I think they had some reason to be afraid. But once they used Starkiller Base to take out the core systems of the New Republic, they realized that the New Republic is a joke.
It's like, oh, nowhere to
and now they have nothing to stop them.
They go from wiping out the New Republic to going first the Resistance, then the New Republic. Because the Resistance suddenly poses a new threat poses more of a threat to them than the New Republic does.
Probably because they're the only ones putting up a fight.
Exactly. Yeah. It's hard to fight. It's hard to not perceive a fight in somebody that actually is fighting rather than the New Republic, which isn't. It's so crazy that half the shit they did, half the shit they tried to get away with these movies.
I mean, I think the craziest thing about the sequel trilogy, and this comes up in Rise of Skywalker, is that the Emperor has been slowly rebuilding himself on Exegol, some planet in the space boonies that we've never fucking heard of.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Fake planet.
The space boonies.
Makes a return.
And we have this fleet of hundreds of, there's just this absurd amount of fleet of Star Destroyers that each have a Death Star laser. It doesn't make any sense.
Keep in mind,
they have to be manned. And it's established that even if they're using clone technology, that shit takes time in the prequels.
Keep in mind, with Palpatine, the DS2, Death Star 2, the second Death Star, it was in the Yavin system, correct?
The second Death Star was over Endor.
Okay, it was over. The first one was
yeah.
And then they in Rise of Skywalker, they go back to Endor, to a different region of the planet, and explore the Death Star 2's ruins, even though there shouldn't be any. But
right, because it blew up in orbit and then should have evaporated on re-entry.
Yeah.
How in the hell? And this is part of the Exegol thing. How in the hell does Palpatine get from? I know what you're going to say. How in the hell does Palpatine get from Endor? How does he fall out of the Death Star, float through space to Exegol?
He didn't even fall out of the Death Star. He fell down like a reactor shaft and exploded into Force energy or something.
But, Josh, I think you're not getting something. The Sith, I can't even say it.
The dark side is, of Force, is the pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
And they use the same line from the prequel.
I guess you could say he did find a way to cheat death.
He did have Legus's teachings, so I guess he could have probably found a way to cheat death. But I think
Did he also artificially inseminate Rey then?
Apparently.
Like you said, like
Well,
flushed out, or
well,
did he
not
have weird
Rey,
palpy
but
sex?
there was a
apparently-
Oh, yeah,
there was a
yeah, that's right.
there was a theory that Palpatine was technically the father of Anakin Skywalker by force creating a baby
I thought
the
that
chosen one inside
I
of
thought that was
Shmi.
Plagueis.
It was probably Plagueis' plan, but that's for another.
It's for
episode.
another. I'm going to briefly cover this because I know this. The thing with Plagueis was that Plagueis was attempting to manipulate the midichlorians into submitting to his will.
Yeah.
So he believed that the creation of the chosen one, because Plagueis was still alive in episode 1. The creation of the chosen one, Anakin Skywalker, he believed to be the Force reacting to his attempts to control it and subverse it.
So the theory is that Palp did that.
The theory is that Palpatine created Anakin Skywalker to eventually assist in overthrowing the Republic and eventually Plagueis, but Palpatine did that himself.
They can never. It's like there's always two, but there's always one
It's the
because
rule
the
of
two
two.
always killed the first.
It's the rule of two.
Yeah.
Because the apprentice will always kill the master.
Yeah.
And then
100% time.
create a new apprentice, or sometimes with the aid of that new apprentice, kill the master.
Right.
And then the
It's-
apprentice kills him in like 2 years.
Right. It's
the circle of
It's the circle of life. Or the circle of Sith life, at least.
That's true.
So that's where the whole Rey thing comes from, but I still don't understand how Rey factors into this.
You know what? I just
insert SpongeBob gif of his arm wrapping around his arm here, because I don't understand the direction of Rey somehow being Palpatine.
They tried
Skywalker
to salvage the
kid.
plot through this. That's
nostalgia. Come see our movie, please, dear God.
I guess. You know what, Devin? Here's my theory about this. Is going to be a joke theory, but here's my theory about Palpatine being recreated.
Oh boy.
He's actually secretly made a phazon, and when he got thrown into the Death Star 2 reactor, it acted like Dark Samus on Dark Aether, and he just rematerialized.
I'm
in
going
space.
to come over this table and beat you. If there was one point we could have brought Metroid into this, it's comparing female lead protagonists.
Well, we can do that later.
We can do that later,
We can do that
but-
part 4. But at the same time,
We haven't we haven't
even really
This
covered
is the
Rise
background
of Skywalker.
to the movie. We haven't even got through the shitty plot, the pace that my friend who goes to see movies once every 2 years, he's on. Okay, let's be honest. He got like a 12 on his ACT, not the sharpest knife in the kitchen.
Do I know this guy?
No, he doesn't go to the school. He's a
Okay.
football player. He goes to another college. But he got out of the theater, and the first thing he said to me was like, wow, that was really fast-paced in the beginning. That was, like, jarring how many scenes there were so quick. And I was like, he noticed! Like, come on! What are you doing?
The pacing of the movie is odd. The plot is odd. It's the movie is an aberration.
Yeah, and
Weird LSD trip.
it's really
Like, not the
weird.
good shit.
It's really weird when you watch a movie and you hear the reviews from the movie, and the best thing that people can say about the movie is
Cool.
they retconned a bunch of stuff from TLJ and they poked fun at TLJ.
But let's be fair. That was my favorite part of the movie.
Okay, right. See, and that's a problem because the point of a movie, especially the
Yeah, I know.
finale of a trilogy, is not to retcon
Yeah.
the movie before it.
The point of the trilogy is to be continuous and play into each other perfectly. And it did not.
I did notice a lot more callbacks to The Force Awakens in Rise of Skywalker than there were callbacks to The Last Jedi, probably because they were busy retconning The Last Jedi.
They just didn't mention it. And you're like, this is fun. I
Well,
love
and
this.
anytime they did mention The Last Jedi, they made fun of it.
Yeah, like why? You should be. What was the line that Luke says when she like throws the lightsaber? And he's like, you should handle a Jedi's weapon with more care or something. After he just yoinked one over his shoulder like 20 minutes ago in his timeline. Like
In TLJ, yeah.
takes the lightsaber that Rey worked so hard to give him. He just takes it, tosses it over her shoulder. Rey does the same thing when she goes to that same planet to just
do the same thing.
do the same thing Luke did, and then Luke comes in and he's like, "Nah, you can't do this. You showed me the error of my ways. You can't pull this same
Subverting
shit.
expectations
Get the
twice.
fuck back out there."
Bro, I feel like the writing is just like, we want to subvert expectations because that is good writing, and it's like you can't do it every single 5 minutes in the frickin' story you dinguses.
Yeah,
They did it twice in that same freaking block of.
I hate to bring pro
ground.
wrestling into this, but plot twists are not always the best thing ever. And anybody who's seen Vince Russo's writing can attest to that. You don't need plot twist you don't need plot twist after curb check in a movie. You need consistency somewhere.
That was a big problem for me, is I felt like they did a lot of things, or they made a lot of decisions just to be like, oh, look at this. I don't remember the woman's name, but the person, Lando, was like, hey, we should go on an adventure too after TROS was done. Evidently.
Oh, yeah, she was an ex-stormtrooper too.
Yeah. Oh, evidently there's a whole company, and I guess that they don't, like...
He just went to Endor.
If you're the Empire, you've had years of, like, making sure that these abducted children stay in line, and all of a sudden you just have companies en masse that are deciding that we don't need to be stormtroopers anymore. I feel like that wouldn't go unpunished if you were the Empire, because you need to keep these people in line.
Yeah, with Finn it makes sense, because he was a special case, and he turns out to be Force sensitive.
Yeah, it's just with Finn Finn's a special case, and I can understand like a cascade effect coming from Finn, because it's like all of a sudden Finn is one of like the big heroes of the Resistance and everything, and
but
look at this special forces guy to leave. Yeah, why? Well,
they're a fascist regime.
They should have better information control.
They're ostensibly space Nazis. They should have better control over that.
Yeah, and with the technology, in that it's like in North Korea, it's hard to get information about the world outside, especially if you're living in the vacuum of space on a destroyer where the only communications come in through the
destroyer,
the government. It's like,
yeah, what? It would be next to impossible to actually get that kind of information in unless you're on the ground fighting.
Yeah, it's like, how does he even know about Luke Skywalker? You would think that they would be, or like he's like, oh, you're Poe Dameron, the Resistance pilot, and it's like, well, you would think they would just be told that the Empire never lost. They were the first Empire, and all is great, and they're the best, most fightiest people on the planet, and no one can stand up to them. It's just odd.
But if that's the case, then why are they the First Order and not the Empire?
Well, no, now they're the Final Order, because...
Oh, fuck me.
like, naming is their strong suit.
Oh, man.
Evidently not.
Well, okay.
Victory.
Title crawl. Let's get to
Victory's our destiny.
We have finally managed to get to the title crawl of the movie. The very first line was the dead speak. And it's like, oh, Palpatine, before he can, control the galaxy, he has this huge freaking fleet, and before he can even send them out, because evidently they don't have shields unless they're outside of the planet's atmosphere for some reason, and they can't navigate off this planet, he just projects his voice into space, and was like, hi, I'm Palpatine, I'm back, you should probably try to, be a Sith, or also probably blow your planet up, I don't know, you have 16 hours, bye. And then it's like, oh, let's give time to the Resistance to orchestrate some fucking, weird McMuffin fucking hunt in order I don't
McMuffin hunts?
I don't the MacGuffins are fucking crazy. Just put them in atmosphere, or out of atmosphere, put them in orbit.
Why is there only one Star Destroyer that knows what up is?
I don't, truly, they literally just say they don't know which way is up in there. I mean, I don't know, it looks like the ground, or just maybe follow him.
Oh, no. You see... the Star Destroyers are really poorly designed, Nick. You know the little tower? That's where the bridge is. That's where you're looking out of, is that frickin' tower.
It's just, I mean, I guess.
All you see
is it's a hyperbole.
I know.
But and then the Y-Wings, let's get this Death Star tech. And then one fucking Y-Wing can shoot 2 blasts into it and blow it up. Or why doesn't one of these fuckers just Haldo maneuver and take out the entire First Order fleet?
Well, with Y-Wings, you see a squad of them disable a Star Destroyer. That Star Destroyer is disabled, which allows another cruiser to just completely fuck with it and ram it into another Star Destroyer.
Well, okay.
And we do see the Y-Wings come back in Rise of Skywalker, don't we?
Yeah, because they're the ones taking out these... I don't know if it's more than one scene, but I know at least in one scene, they make point of showing a Y-Wing taking out one of the new fucking Death Star Destroyer things. And it's like, so this could have been useful in the opening of TLJ, just saying. Because, these things existed. You didn't need slow-ass bombers. It's kamikaze run.
The Y-Wing is just... It's such a garbage design. I don't understand.
And it somehow existed since the time of the Republic.
Apparently. And why didn't the Rebellion use it? They could have probably blown up the Death Death Star with it.
They tried,
Apparently.
but okay. So it was originally.
Explain to me J.J. Abrams' entire way of negotiating around this plot point that I've just brought up.
I can't.
Oh, boy. Amazing!
No, my point is that in A New Hope, the original Death Star run was done by Y-Wings. They fucked up. Luke does the same run, uses the Force to guide the proton torpedoes into the exasport shaft. That's what destroys the first Death Star. Yeah. So the Rebellion did use Y-Wings. I don't know why the Resistance was so sparing with the use of them.
Yeah, there's Y-Wings are bombers, whereas X-Wings are like fighters. Like that's
X-Wings are all-purpose fighters.
Exactly.
Y-Wings are specifically heavier bomber types.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. In TLJ, why do they have these weird big-ass ships that are, most of them get blown up, or they run into each other, like one TIE fighter takes out 3 because they just all hit each other before they even reach the target, when they have Y-Wings that just, do the same thing.
Yeah.
And are faster. And
I really just don't understand it, dude.
You don't kill 5 fucking crew members. It's one person.
Y-Wings are the Mary Sue of ship design, apparently.
Well, it's not.
Are you sure?
It's just like
the Millennium Falcon exists.
That's true. That is very true. Well,
mass-produced.
Okay, there we go.
To be real,
yeah.
the Millennium Falcon deserves to be a Mary Sue because it was a labor of love crafted by Lando Calrissian.
The Y-Wing is special in TROS. It's like one person with a freaking slingshot could take down one of these things if they shot it in the Death Star cannon. It's like, as long as you get a couple fucking shots in there, it's gonna blow up the entire ship. It's like, I don't know, this seems like maybe not the best design decision. Like, maybe there's a reason why you don't put the blasters on the outside of ships. Like, maybe.
Well, where else are you gonna put the damn thing?
Like a Death Star in it.
There was some concept art of leaked Star Destroyer designs that actually looked unique and weren't just old modeled Star Destroyers that have a laser tacked on at the end.
Well,
but apparently those aren't allowed.
Yeah, and see,
plus they store them under the freaking ground. Like, they cause damage to the ships just for a cool visual.
Another Y-Wing issue, or another issue with the Star Destroyer design, is that if I recall correctly, the Star Destroyers only have cannons on top. They don't have any bottom cannons. They don't have any side cannons.
They have 6 main turbo laser batteries on top. Those are the primary weapons. They have point defense turrets and all that other jazz elsewhere on the ship.
That doesn't work at all for I have a problem with this because Poe, in the initial scene of TFA, you see him dodging these surface defense weapons.
That's Last Jedi.
Is that Last Jedi?
Yeah, he was taking out the Dreadnought by just swerving around all those turrets.
That's what we were thinking about earlier. That's the lead ship we couldn't think about. But yeah, and it's like these are specifically designed to deal with that ship. And that's been the same ship for 50 years. Yeah, I can't believe he's that good of a pilot.
Your stupid X-70 X-Wing.
T-70.
Whatever. Your Model 70 X-Wing.
Model.
But it's bad writing.
The whole trilogy was plagued by bad writing, and we're to the point where we can't even describe specific plot points of Rise of Skywalker without...
Every single one is
garbage. Without getting just completely dragged onto bad plot point after bad plot point.
What's a good one? This is a fun game. What was your favorite part of TROS?
Definitely not Kylo's death.
The part where Kylo cheated death by falling into that pit and then climbing out, but immediately spending what last life he had by resurrecting Rey.
Why did they kiss? Okay, I can't. Okay,
They were building up a romance, didn't you notice?
They touched tips in TLJ when they Force Skyped. I don't. TROS. I'm not sure what my favorite part of that was. Honestly, it was probably when God, it was Mary Tran. I can't remember what her character is, but I know her name.
Rose.
Yeah, my favorite part was her going, "Oh, I can't go with you because I have things." It's like she was blowing off a date, but it was like, I have things and stuff to do, and then she just didn't go.
I'm needed back here. You guys go out.
Or the Millennium Falcon, how in episode 4 or 5, it's the entire thing is oh, we're having issues. And the Millennium Falcon isn't at 100%. And in this one, it's it's fucking on fire. It is 30% of the ship it used to be. And then 10 minutes later, it's repaired. And it's been half a day in time in the world.
Oh, of course.
Oh, it's literally been hours because the entire thing is set in 16 hours.
If there was one thing I do like about what the Rise of Skywalker did, it was some lore building with Leia, because they have a flashback scene of Luke
training.
Of her Jedi training. So that's some nice lore building that, hey, she actually did do some training with Luke. She even had her own lightsaber, which unfortunately is given to Rey and is the key to Palpatine's death, but that's...
So that's Rey's new lightsaber, then?
No. She
one
buries
of them.
it. Well, it's weird. She gets that lightsaber and then Luke's, and then she buries it at the end of the movie, because she's, like...
It buries both Luke and Leia's lightsabers.
Together, because,
She builds her own, and it has a yellow blade.
Yeah, no, I'm aware.
Where's she
and that's
getting the crystals for those, by the way? Aren't they, like...
There's one specific planet where you can get them from.
But I thought at this point they were, super scarce.
Yeah, kyber crystals have always been scarce.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
And
Especially because they were fucking 10,000 Death Star weapons.
Dude, I don't know what the lore is anymore on lightsaber colors, but I know what the original lore of it was supposed to be. And Rey having a gold lightsaber doesn't really make sense.
What does it mean in the official
in the original lore, a gold or a white lightsaber happened when a Jedi took a Sith lightsaber, took the red crystal, and purified it.
Well, it could have been Kylo's.
No, it couldn't have. She had left the planet before Kylo tossed his excellently designed lightsaber.
Best part of the whole
She could have
sequel
gone
trilogy.
back in and, like, forced...
It was in an ocean.
She could have been like, ooh,
I mean, it's obviously something...
Accio lightsaber.
It's obviously something that's well within her ability to just go to a random-ass
Be
planet
Moses and just, like...
decide to part the fucking sea and get a lightsaber.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I believe the new Disney metric
I like the
on...
cross guards on his lightsaber.
See, okay, we can talk about Kylo's lightsaber in a minute, but I think
cool.
I think the new lightsaber standard is it's just the color it is because it feels like being that way. Whereas the original explanation was Jedi Knights that prefer to that rely on lightsaber combat have a blue lightsaber because they're defenders of the Force, and people with green lightsabers are especially Force attuned, and they primarily rely on the Force, and they're guardians of the Force instead of guardians of the Jedi Order. And then the gold lightsabers were originally temple guards and highly esteemed Jedi and Jedi that have redeemed themselves or have redeemed Sith lightsabers. And Sith lightsabers are red because they're evil. And
that's literally it. They're plagued with dark side energy, and that's why they're red.
It's fun.
It's imbued with dark. Yeah, it's imbued with the dark side energy.
Plus it's
but now
cool
it's
as hell
the Sith lightsabers are red because they made them bleed, and they killed good people with them. And the blue lightsaber's blue because they want it to be blue. And it's just like, stop it. There was a great set of lore for this. You should have just stuck with it.
Stop it. Get some help.
And technically, in your new way of saying the lore, a lightsaber turns red when a Jedi kills other Jedi, or when a Jedi kills people that are deemed good to the Force, or makes
why
the
didn't
kyber crystal bleed.
Anakin's lightsaber turn red? Because he literally murdered a dozen children,
exactly.
at least.
Exactly.
No, I don't think you understand. The prequels aren't canon anymore, according to Disney. Nothing's canon. Only the sequels are canon. They're renaming them to the OT.
Oh my God, this.
Yeah,
it's funny because I was watching a Star Wars Theory video, and I believe it was a Star Wars Theory video, and he said, I wonder if they will release a revised version of Revenge of the Sith where Anakin's lightsaber turns red after killing the younglings.
Look, George Lucas has got enough grief for going back and editing the original trilogy. I sure as shit they just leave the prequel.
Yeah,
I hope they do. Believe me, I'm not in favor of this.
On this exact topic, there's a digital effects house thing on YouTube where they do like short skits called Corridor Crew, and they do like violent movies. So they take a movie and they make it especially violent. And they did that scene from Star Wars, and they cobbled it together with Padme looking out over the city and being like, worrying for Anakin. And it's just like, so you see Anakin, and he's slaughtering all the kids, and then you just see like a child's head hit the window and splatter right in front of her.
Jesus Christ.
It's like not super graphic. It's clearly like comic-y and like not real. But it was a funny visual because it's like, you're like, oh God, that's horrible. And then Padme's sitting there like, oh, I wonder if Anakin's okay. Head from a child. Yeah. I was dying.
There's so much lore implication bullshit with the way that Disney has decided to revise everything, and Rise of Skywalker just throws that all for a loop. Well, I'm fine with Rey having a gold lightsaber. I think that's a decent thing. It's a unique like character quality. It allows her to continue to use Anakin's original lightsaber hilt. because she's
that was one of the lightsabers she buried. She built her lightsaber from scratch.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was
I'm pretty sure she used the old staff she had when she was a scavenger.
It was her staff. It looks like her staff.
And then she makes a lightsaber out of that staff, which I think is
Cool concept.
I think that's a nice concept.
Yeah, it looks like one of the tips of her staff.
Okay, yeah, no, this is a really well designed lightsaber. This is
The question
okay.
is though,
okay,
lightsabers
I'm
are
on
supposed
board
to be
with
when
this.
you complete your training as a Jedi, and she didn't. How does she know how to build one as well?
To be fair, Luke didn't exactly complete his training either, yet he built his green one from scratch as well.
Maybe he went back to Yoda.
There was I believe. The
Wait,
legend,
Yoda
I believe I believe the legend's explanation for Luke having the ability to build his own lightsaber was when he went back to Obi-Wan's house following Obi-Wan's death. There was a crate in Obi-Wan's house that could only be unlocked by Luke Skywalker, and it contained a book that had information in it regarding how to build your own lightsaber.
Because she had the Jedi text. So that's
she had the sacred
Jedi
text.
text.
The sacred text.
I'm a big fan of this lightsaber design, and having I like gold blades to begin with. I think they're pretty neat. I wouldn't personally, like, if I had my own lightsaber, I wouldn't want a gold blade anymore, but that's a great lightsaber design. I'm glad that they're not using Anakin's anymore for it,
and that's actually well put in the ground.
Yes. I'm
Leave it alone.
I think that's a nifty trope that has been used through the entire
Bury the lightsaber.
through all three trilogies.
Bury
Anakin's lightsaber that's a nice thing to tie everything together, to tie all three trilogies together. This is the lightsaber that Anakin Skywalker, the hero of the Clone Wars, used to help vanquish the Separatist army.
And then the Jedi. Well,
and then this is the lightsaber that Luke Skywalker was given by Obi-Wan Kenobi to start his Jedi training. The lightsaber that he used the first time he faced Vader, and then lost after fighting Vader because he was bested. Because it wasn't his own lightsaber, and it sets up for him building his own lightsaber because it's not his lightsaber. It's important that you have your own lightsaber because you have your own balance that you need with the lightsaber. And so it's just a nice building block for Luke. And then with Rey, I feel like Rey should have had her own lightsaber way sooner than the end of this movie. But maybe if J.J. Abrams was the director from the beginning, we would have had this. But
I also have issues with the fact that she found the lightsaber. She was given the lightsaber. How is Anakin's lightsaber even, like, there? And they're like, it's a good question for another time. Where? When?
And then they don't answer it.
Do it a comic or something.
Well,
like, the whole trilogy's done. We still have no fucking idea how this lightsaber migrated into this bar.
well, the thing is that his lightsaber was lost.
Stir the cocktails. It's fun. We can charge extra for the show.
His lightsaber somehow migrated from falling out a reactor vent in Bespin City into the hands of Maz
Kanata, yeah.
Yeah, Maz Kanata, which, from a legal standpoint, finders keepers, possession is 9/10 of the law.
From a legal standpoint, like, there's any way to enforce the law.
Right.
The New Republic doesn't even have a military. How the fuck can they enforce the law?
I don't know, but it somehow got into the possession of Maz, which, honestly, you know what? Maybe that's a Star Wars story to cover. How the hell did Maz Kanata...
That could have been.
Maybe that's a side...
Just following the lightsaber from its perspective. To,
Yeah.
like, through the...
As if the lightsaber's its own thing.
It's not like from its perspective, but like follow the story, like each person that interacts with.
Yes.
That could honestly be a decent series or just a one-off movie. It'd be interesting. I'm not saying I'd want that, but I probably would have. That would have been cool. I don't know.
Right.
Even if it was just a comic that was like 2 pages long, I just want to know.
So, are there any more comments on
Yes.
Rise of Skywalker before we wrap up?
I have a big problem.
Okay.
With the fact that the final fight was just the worst final boss fight other than Destiny 2. Like, it was
I hate you, Nick.
just like, he throws him down a well, and he's like, oh, I'm stronger than you. And she's like, oh, I have not one, but 2 lightsabers going for the price of $18.99.
I
if you
am
order
all
now.
the
Like,
Sith.
Yeah, I am all the Jedi, and it's like Mace Windu with 1 lightsaber couldn't. I mean, I don't know. It's weird.
Mace Windu had him dead to rights.
Yeah, exactly. Anakin kind of fucked it up,
Damn it, Anakin!
I don't know. It's annoying to me how it's like he killed himself and he just couldn't stop doing little zappy thingies. Like, it's the second time he's damn near killed himself by just not turning off his fucking lightning abilities.
That's the third time. Because he damn near killed himself in episode 3 with Mace Windu reflecting it.
Episode 6, that's not what kills him. He just kind of gets thrown over an edge because he's an old guy. And Vader's like, toss.
Fuck this shit. You're killing my son.
Like,
I'm a good guy now.
The planes, like, he force lightnings the sky, which visually was fucking cool. But a lot of this shit is just cool visually. That's why it's in here. Like, the fucking 1,000 Star Destroyers have death cannons. But, like, he force lightnings the sky. All the planes are in free fall for, like, 5 minutes. Like, literally. Because they cut away and there's, like, other things happening. And then, you know, they cut back to Palpatine. Or they come back to, like, Poe. People are falling, but none of the main characters. None of the main characters follow this guy. So I don't know how fucking high they were in the sky, but they literally were free falling for like 3 scenes before like they had the ability to fly again.
Nah, fantastic.
Like how are they just not all dead?
Well, yeah. Well, other than Rey's name that she chooses at the end, which makes no sense because she's just adopting the name instead of being of actual lineage, which is why Devon and I choke on saying that name all the time. Go ahead.
It's like, you'd think Anakin would come back as a Force ghost and talk to Kylo and be like, hey, those voices in your head aren't me, bro. They're fucking Palpatine. You should go kill him.
Big disappointment we didn't see Force ghost Anakin.
We heard him for half a second.
Well, and we also heard Qui-Gon and
we heard a
Windu.
shit ton of Jedi voices. And that was also one of my favorite parts.
And also someone that people didn't know was dead.
Ahsoka.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years. God damn it, she should be.
Yeah, she should be.
I hear Jar Jar in the background. Beat him, you can. Thank you.
Yeah. So with that in mind, here is my big idea, big suggestion going forward for Disney.
Don't.
Whether this gets out there or not.
It won't.
It won't, but a boy can dream. I think now would be the perfect time to restart the Star Wars story stuff. Because I love the branch chain storytelling. You have a lot of real estate to work with now. You have the sequel trilogy, which needs a lot of fleshing out. And I feel like you could do a couple of different movies of just branch off Star Wars story movies based on the sequel trilogy. Kenobi, it's a big one that everyone's been asking for. This is something that people want. I know people got their Mandalorian fix with The Mandalorian, but there's still a lot of Boba Fett fans out there that want a Boba Fett movie.
Please tell me it's just a 3-hour-long movie of him sitting there like cooking soup or something in his fucking hut. Like Kenobi.
Oh, Kenobi. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be the best troll ever with you.
I'd pay money to watch that.
Same. Bring back Ewan McGregor and it's just a cooking show. Instead of binging with Babish, it's binging with Ben.
Wait.
Oh my god.
Someone call up Kathleen.
Mr. McGregor, we have an excellent proposal for you.
Disney, call me.
We won't even charge for the idea. You could just use it.
Just give me $10,000 and I'll be happy.
It's honestly nothing.
Pocket change, Disney.
That's what they pay their waiters for a day for writing a scene.
Hit me up. Binging with Ben. God damn. But there's
just Force goes Ben too.
There's so many ideas you can go with here.
He's telling you what to do. Like, hey, if you can please cut those onions and just looking over there.
There's so many ideas you can go forward with. You know, even with like Ahsoka being dead, which would mean, it's
That's
perfect.
A story.
It's a perfect opportunity to have an Ahsoka story.
They're probably going to.
Now the issue is that Star Wars Rebels season or the Star Wars Rebels 2 or some follow-up to Star Wars Rebels has been confirmed as happening. So I don't know if Ahsoka's story will be concluded in that because Ahsoka does show up in Rebels.
She does. She quote unquote dies, but this is stuff we can get into in the next episode.
Late. Exactly. So with that in mind, the biggest thing that they can do at this point is start fleshing out the universe more. You know, this is an IP that when Disney bought it, it had a really well fleshed out, albeit sometimes confusing, expanded universe, and that was one of people's favorite things about Star Wars. There was a never-ending amount of expanded universe content, which we're going to cover in part 3 of our Star Wars series, which probably will just be Devon and I, considering Nick is mostly movie-focused. But that's one of the biggest things about Star Wars that fans felt gypped about from Lucasfilms to the Disney transition was all of their favorite expanded universe stuff from Star Wars Battlefront 2005 to Republic Commando to all of the books just got retconned. All of it just got made into
one
the
Thanos
Legends
snap.
non-canon. One Thanos snap, and it was all no longer canon. So with that in mind, I feel like the best thing that Disney can do now is just start going and fleshing out the universe more. They already have their comic series, which have fleshed out Han Solo even more.
And Darth Vader.
And have fleshed out Darth Vader. They have the 7th season of the Clone Wars coming up to help flesh that out. They gracefully kept the Clone Wars stuff canon, which helps just flesh out the universe more. This is the biggest thing that Disney needs to do now. Whether we liked the sequel trilogy or not, it's behind us, and we have to recognize that. We can complain about it as much as we want, but the thing that we have to realize now is that we got to look forward to everything else Star Wars related that can come out, and just hope that Disney can prove that Rogue One wasn't a one-off, and prove that they have the ability to write excellent stories like Rogue One, just in other areas of the Star Wars universe, because there's plenty more to cover. Star Wars is a deep, deep universe.
The lore's deep.
And anybody who's looked into the Legends content knows that. So I felt like the expanded universe needed to get cleaned out because there was a lot of confusing stuff. And there was a lot of, the Dark Empire section of the expanded universe needed to get cleaned out. But we can we'll cover that in part 3, which is definitely going to be focused on Legends and canon. Big thanks to Nick for coming out again today to help us cover these 5 movies and stay with us here for about 2 hours of recording time. Yeah, big thanks to Nick. Big thanks to Devon for once again being my co-host and once again taking a dive down into his favorite sci-fi series of all time.
It's been a pleasure.
And then even thanks to our roommate Levi here, who's usually gone by this time on Fridays because he usually has to work, but is still here for some reason. Well, and with that out of the way, any closing comments from Nick?
Disappointed.
Disappointment. That's easy way to sum up the series. How about you, Devon?
Dave Filoni will save Star Wars.
Dave Filoni will say, I'll agree with that. But we'll talk more about Dave Filoni in part 3 of our Star Wars series when we cover the expanded universe canon and Legends, which will include coverage on Star Wars The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, a little bit at least, Star Wars, the other Star Wars projects such as The Mandalorian, and maybe even a little bit of stuff about Galaxy's Edge and stuff that Disney is doing outside of just the movies and outside of media. So thanks for tuning in. FPP Episode 5.